Welcome to our coverage of today's protests happening across the nation. From coast to coast, people are taking to the streets to make their voices heard. And look, let's be clear, protests are like America's appendix. We don't always want to think about them. They can be messy, occasionally require surgery, but they're a vital sign that something somewhere is definitely up. And today, something definitely is. Today's demonstrations are as diverse as the country itself, with a whole smorgasbord of grievances on display. We're talking everything from economic inequality and racial injustice to environmental concerns, and a very pointed message for a certain ex-president who seems to think this is all about him. Spoiler alert, it isn't entirely. Now, you might be tempted to think, oh, here we go again, America's at it with the whole divided nation thing. But to reduce these protests to simple division is like saying a hurricane is just a bit breezy. It's far more nuanced than that. Yes, there's anger, there's frustration, there's a deep-seated feeling that for too many, the American dream feels more like a late-stage capitalist fever dream. But beneath the surface, there's something else bubbling up. A collective sense of enough is enough. This isn't just about left versus right, it's about right versus wrong. It's about a system that seems rigged against everyday folks, about a planet on the brink, and about a former reality TV host who can't seem to grasp that the words presidential and pardon shouldn't be uttered in the same breath. Speaking of the orange elephant in the room, let's address the Trump-shaped shadow looming over these protests. Now, I know what you're thinking. Every time there's a protest, someone tries to tie it back to Trump. It's like the political version of blaming everything on Mercury being in retrograde. But here's the thing. This time, it's actually relevant. You see, a significant portion of these protests are specifically targeting the policies enacted, the norms eroded, and the divisions inflamed during the Trump administration. Think of it like this. You know that feeling when you clean your entire house, top to bottom, and then your messy roommate comes home and just exists in the space? Yeah, that's kind of what these protests feel like. A reaction to the lingering mess left behind by the previous occupant of the White House. The anti-Trump sentiment at these rallies is about as subtle as a brick to the face, and frankly just as satisfying for those hurling it. We're talking signs that would make a sailor blush, chants that could curdle milk, and a level of passionate dissent that hasn't been seen since, well, the last time Trump did literally anything. But it's important to remember this isn't just about Trump as an individual. Although his apparent ability to spontaneously generate scandals is certainly a contributing factor. This is about the policies he championed, the rhetoric he spewed, and the dangerous precedent he set for what's deemed acceptable in American politics. It's about the erosion of democratic norms, the emboldening of extremist groups, and the normalization of blatant disregard for truth and accountability. Now, let's talk about the overarching theme uniting these protests, hands off. No, it's not a commentary on people's personal space issues, although given the state of the world, that's a fair assumption. Hands off is a rallying cry against government overreach, against attempts to restrict personal freedoms, and against the insidious creep of policies that seek to control rather than empower. It's a resounding no to those who try to dictate what we can say, what we can believe, and how we choose to live our lives. It's a demand for autonomy, a plea for bodily integrity, and a firm reminder that in a democracy, the power ultimately resides with the people, not the politicians. While we're still waiting on official numbers, one thing is clear. A lot of people are really not okay with, well, a lot of things. We're talking crowds so big they make a Kardashian wedding look like a quiet night in. From major metropolitan areas to smaller towns, it seems like everyone and their disgruntled mailman decided to take a stand. And let's be honest, when even the mailman is fed up enough to swap his satchel for a protest sign, you know things are serious. Estimates suggest hundreds of thousands, potentially millions, have mobilized across the country. This isn't just a fringe movement, folks. This is a groundswell. This is what happens when a critical mass of people feel unheard, unseen, and frankly, a little bit over it. Unsurprisingly, the nation's capital is ground zero for today's demonstrations, because nothing says we're serious like shouting your grievances directly at a building that's seen more scandals than seasons of The Real Housewives. Protesters have descended upon Washington, D.C. with a laundry list of demands longer than a CVS receipt. Their main objective? To remind those in power that they work for the people, not the other way around. They're demanding accountability, transparency, and a government that prioritizes the needs of its citizens over corporate interests and political maneuvering. Boston, a city with a rich history of telling those in power to shove it, anyone, is once again living up to its rebellious reputation. Protesters have flooded the streets, channeling the spirit of their revolutionary forefathers and mothers to demand justice, equality, and a government that doesn't treat its citizens like walking ATM machines. From healthcare to education, climate change to social justice, Bostonians are making it abundantly clear that they're not afraid to raise their voices and fight for a better future. And if history is any indication, those in power would be wise to listen up. Because when Boston speaks, the rest of the nation tends to pay attention. The Windy City is living up to its name today, but instead of gusts of wind, it's the collective fury of its citizens that's blowing through the streets. Chicago, a city no stranger to fighting for social justice, is once again at the forefront of the hands-off protests. From police brutality to economic disparities, Chicagoans are demanding an end to the systemic issues plaguing their communities. And they're not just marching, they're organizing, they're mobilizing, and they're making it clear that they're not backing down until they see real, tangible change. Known for its coffee, its rain, and its tech giants, Seattle is proving it's also a city with a conscience. The Emerald City is aglow tonight, but it's not the Space Needle. It's the collective fire of thousands of protesters demanding action. Seattleites are taking to the streets to address a range of issues, from income inequality and homelessness to environmental concerns and the rights of marginalized communities. They're sending a clear message that they won't stand idly by, while their city, their state, and their country continue down a path of division and injustice. And, in true Seattle fashion, they're doing it with passion, with purpose, and with a healthy dose of Pacific Northwest spirit. Of course, no protest would be complete without its fair share of creative signage, and let me tell you, today's offerings do not disappoint. We've got everything from witty wordplay that would make Oscar Wilde proud to searing indictments of the powers that be that could melt steel. Seriously, these people should be hired by Hallmark, or at least Twitter, because their ability to distill complex issues into pithy, shareable slogans is truly a sight to behold. And lest we forget the more visually inclined protesters who've clearly taken inspiration from Pinterest, Etsy, and possibly a fever dream or two. Giant puppets, elaborate costumes, and signs so sparkly they could blind a disco ball. These folks understood the assignment, and they came to slay. Thank you for joining us for this overview of today's protests. Stay tuned for more updates and in-depth coverage on these important events. Remember, this is just the beginning. These protests are a snapshot of a nation grappling with its identity, its conscience, and its future. It's a reminder that democracy is not a spectator sport. It's a full-contact, no-holds-barred match where everyone has a role to play. So stay engaged, stay informed, and most importantly, stay loud. Because the fight for a more just, equitable, and sustainable world doesn't end when the protests die down. It starts there.